Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight. 3 women and a baby are in hospital after a major crash in the heart of the city. Angelina King is live at the intersection for us right now. Angelina, what can you tell us?
Well, it's still a pretty active scene here, Dwight. We actually just got asked to be moved a few meters from the scene because collision reconstructionists are still here kind of trying to piece together exactly what's happening. So they were having to canvass this part of the street. You can still see some debris behind me from some of the vehicles. Now, 3 vehicles were involved. We do know that 3 women were taken to hospital as well as 1 child. Police just told us that the child is okay. The child is just suffered minor injuries. 1 of the women has minor injuries, 1 has serious injuries, another one of the women has life-threatening injuries at this point. And police just also updated us on, they have a bit of a better idea of exactly what happened. They had the chance to speak with some witnesses as well as go through some surveillance video. There is a police camera on the northeast corner here, and that showed a lot of what happened. So take a listen to police explaining what caused this crash.
I believe it's a Toyota Highlander behind me, was traveling north here on Bay and entered the intersection, colliding with 2 adult females, pedestrians walking through the crosswalk. That vehicle collided with 2 other vehicles that were traveling west, as I've described, one of the white Toyotas and the pickup truck.
This happened just after 3 o'clock, so a busy time at a busy intersection. A lot of people seeing and hearing what happened. I spoke with the man who was riding his bike when he says that he heard the collision and then saw the aftermath. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I heard this bang, right? And I went closer to there were 2 people lying down there. One was like a really old lady, and she was not moving. She was kind of like lifeless. And even her hand was totally twisted. And there was another lady, I think she was fine too. And then I just spent some time, people were trying to give some, CPR and stuff, I believe.
So a lot of people were at the scene, and police still want to talk to witnesses. They say that there's a lot of video and photos out there, and they want to see them. So right now, the entire intersection here is blocked off. Police say that it'll remain that way for at least a few more hours. TTC service is disrupted. Subways are running, though. And police have a message for people on the streets. Nobody has been injured, or nobody has been killed at this point in this collision, but 19 pedestrians have been killed so far this year in Toronto, and they say they understand it's been a difficult week on the roads. A woman was killed yesterday, but they say to remain vigilant on the road, whether you're biking, you're walking, or you're driving, and to just watch out for everybody and everything around you to remain safe. Dwight?
Cannot get distracted out there. Thank you for that, Angelina.
Students this fall will still be in smaller class sizes and still enjoy a variety of courses.
The layoff notices went out, classes were canceled, and students, parents, and school boards brace for bigger class sizes this fall. Now, it looks like that won't happen. The Ford government announcing today that classroom size will effectively stay the same, with students heading back to class in less than 2 weeks. School boards are now scrambling to figure out what this latest development means. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley joins us live now. And Mike, the education minister blaming all of this confusion on misinformation.
Well, Dwight, the government says that the teachers' unions and some school boards were sowing fears about mass layoffs and canceled classes that would happen this fall. Well, the education minister does admit that he is sticking with the plan that we'll see far fewer high school teachers and much bigger classes down the road.
A handful of protesters, unhappy with the government's new sex ed curriculum, try to send a message to the education minister.
And it's another promise made, promise broken.
But talking about sex ed is not the minister's priority today. It's class size.
Which is why today I'm announcing that class sizes will effectively remain the same as last year for this September.
It's a message that contrasts with what his predecessor was saying just a few months ago.
And now it's time to set Ontario's schools on a new sustainable path.
Then Minister Lisa Thompson announcing that the average class size in secondary schools would go from the current level of 22 up to 28.
We know not everyone will agree with every single part of our plan.
Indeed, not everyone agreed.
No cuts!
Students protested, as did teachers and parents. Facing budget cuts, school boards issued layoff notices, canceled optional courses, and predicted some classes would balloon.
If there's 40 people in a class, I don't even know how that'll work.
The education minister now says those fears are overblown.
When it comes to education, we have been consistent, we have been transparent, and we're going to continue to do that.
Although class sizes won't rise much this year, the government still plans to phase in the increase over the next 3 years.
It means fewer course options for students. It means overcrowded classes, and nothing about that, by the minister's own admission this morning, has been changed.
A spokesman for Ontario's largest school board says staff will now have to determine how today's announcement will impact the TDSB. And officials in the Peel District School Board say they need more information before they'll know whether classes or timetables will have to be reorganized.
Now, starting this fall, just to clarify with the numbers, the average class size in the secondary years across the province is going to be 22.5. So that's literally just half a student larger than what it was the previous year, 22. But it still means that the government intends to raise that average class size to 28 over the next 3 years. So that means there's going to be some significant changes coming down the pipe, even if they don't take place this fall. Dwight?
Thank you, Mike. And as Mike just showed us, the education minister was greeted by a small protest before his press conference on class sizes this morning.
He promised us that he would repeal the Kathleen Wynne sex ed. Nothing has been repealed. This is the second September in a row that children will be going to school learning the Kathleen Wynne sex ed curriculum.
The protest was led by Tanya Granick-Allen. She was a candidate for the Ontario PC leadership. In the past, Granick-Allen has called Ontario's sex ed curriculum radical, and she's not satisfied with the changes made by the Ford government, something the education minister says he was asked about today.
I think the big contrast is the former government wrote the curriculum before they consulted. We launched a consultation that was robust, that gave 72,000 people an access point to be heard in government.
The revamped sex ed curriculum delays the teaching of some subjects, such as gender identity, and school boards must allow parents to exempt children from certain subjects. Former Premier Kathleen Wynne spoke about the new curriculum today and how similar it is to the one introduced by her government.
The problem with that is that a year has been wasted at least. There's been confusion and division created, only to land where we started, which was supported by families, supported by science, and supported by experts.
Wynne added that she's pleased with some of the additions to the sex ed curriculum, including strengthening the section on consent.
Thank you.
Doctors and the government team up to find savings in the healthcare system. I'm Chris Glover. Coming up, the list of medical services being called unnecessary and how much money eliminating them could save.
Police are asking for your help in finding a driver involved in a failed hit and run at Midland and Shepherd. Police released this grainy picture of a car that they believe is the second vehicle involved in the accident. It happened yesterday just before noon. A 76-year-old woman was crossing Midland when a truck turning right hit her. The woman was knocked to the ground. A few minutes later, the driver of the white sedan also turned right onto Midland, struck the victim and dragged her. That's when the young male driver pulled over, exited his car, and then got back in and left the scene. Police found the driver of the truck shortly after the accident and are still looking for the man driving that second white car. Police are asking anyone with security or dash cam footage of the area at the time to contact them. We now know who was killed in a shooting last night in North York. Abdulkani Ishmael was shot while driving on Weston Road. That's when his car went off the road and into a tree. Ali Shahsan joins us live from the scene now. And Ali, it's not the first time there's been a shooting in that community.
That's right, Dwight. And it's really easy to actually just drive past this site and not notice anything out of the ordinary, maybe just the damaged tree. But this is the scene of Toronto's latest homicide by gun violence, a tally that keeps ticking up. Another day, another police press conference about a shooting the night before.
We believe it was a targeted shooting. I don't believe that this is a random act. But it's still under investigation for me to be able to confirm that.
It was a fatal drive-by, killing 33-year-old Abdelkani Ismail as he drove along Weston Road last night. The white SUV he was driving crashed into a tree. The suspect or suspects sped off into the night after they fired into his car.
Life-saving efforts were made, and Mr. Ishmael was transported to hospital, where he later succumbed to his injuries. If any individuals have any information regarding this occurrence, we'd ask that they please contact the Toronto Homicide Squad.
For Jane and Weston residents like Chummy Taylor, the gun violence seems relentless.
So almost 25 years I've been around here. And this is the worst I've seen it,
Looking at the data, 3 neighboring West End police divisions have seen the highest number of shootings this year, 23, 31, and 12 Division, where last night's drive-by happened.
It's hard, because even at home, you're not safe anywhere. Even in your homes, it's unsafe. So I don't know what to say, man, but it's sad.
Last week, Police Chief Mark Saunders launched an 11-week intelligence-based strategy to combat the city's gun violence, which is being stoked by gang activity, which is complex.
There has been a transition from just notoriety and belonging to an entity that now makes money, and the money is driven from narcotic distribution and human trafficking.
Station Frederick, the executive director at the aptly named Frontlines Community Hub, is on the front lines of helping area youth.
I witnessed children stampeding in front of my office, and when I looked, that there was a shooting just happened directly, and this was in broad daylight. And they were pounding on our doors.
She worries about the impact on the mental health of the neighborhood.
Sometimes when it hits directly home, sometimes when they lose family members to gun violence, that there's these issues around depression and lack of self-worth, which then transcends into other areas of their life.
That's a complex problem on its own, made even more complicated by the divide between police and the people who know things. This is the latest case where police are asking for people to come forward, say with dash cam video, witness information, anything to help solve Toronto's latest homicide, number 40, here on Weston Road. I'll send it back to you, Dwight.
Thank you, Ali. A community newspaper editor convicted of hate crimes has been sentenced to 1 year in jail.
While it's taken a long time and a lot of people have spent a lot of time and energy on this, it was worth it. So that's what I would say to other people who, receive this type of publication. Don't stand for it. Speak out. Do whatever you can, because nowhere in society should we be tolerating racism or anti-Semitism or misogyny. It just shouldn't be allowed.
James Sears was a writer and editor of Your Ward News. He was found guilty of willfully promoting hatred against women and Jewish people in articles he wrote and edited over a 3-year period. The Crown chose to prosecute the case by summary conviction, meaning the maximum sentence the judge could impose is 1 year in jail, 6 months for each of the charges. Sylvia Williams and her adult son, who is disabled, have never been apart for long. Originally from Barbados, they could now be separated as a result of Canada's immigration rules. As Lisa Shing reports, they're fighting to stay in the country.
For lunch, Sylvia Williams is fixing up some rice and peas and cucumber salad for her son Ramon. Cooking is just one of the daily tasks he can't do on his own. He's blind and...
Ramon has developmental issues in that, although he's an adult, he really cannot manage especially personal matters on his own.
It all stems from a brain tumor Ramon had removed as an infant in Toronto. The two have been back and forth between Canada and Barbados since then. 2 years ago, they applied for refugee status. Ramon faced discrimination and harassment back home, and there are no services for him there. Sylvia was escaping an abusive relationship. Ramon was accepted. Sylvia denied.
I was disappointed and heartbreaking.
My mom is the only person that I know. I don't know no one else.
Her appeal was also rejected because immigration couldn't see a risk to her safety if she returned to Barbados. Sylvia has since launched a judicial review of that decision. If that's thrown out in court, she can be deported at any time.
Every night we're losing sleep over this. Can't eat properly, can't sleep properly.
In another attempt to stay with her son, Sylvia applied to stay in the country on humanitarian grounds, but that can't be considered until at least a year after her judicial review wraps up, according to immigration lawyer Gidi Mammon.
It makes no sense. If we have a humanitarian tradition, it should be available to all and all the time, not just denied arbitrarily for a period of time.
Sylvia says she's thankful Ramon was accepted, but wonders if the government could have helped keep them together without having to jump through so many hoops.
What does it say about the immigration system?
I saw Canada as a humane country where, in cases like this, the administration would have been more lenient. I've lost my property, no job, so I'll be on the streets, more or less. Whereas in Canada, I have residency, a job, and family.
If she's sent back, it would be the first time in their lives the two are separated. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Do you guys have any family?
Remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, we would love to hear from you. Just send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. Khaled, I hosted the Caribbean Tourism Organization's Media Awards today down at the Boulevard Club, and with that weather outside, it was like we were in the Caribbean.
Isn't that amazing? I know. Yeah, I can't believe that, right? You know, and such big changes, too, in terms of what we've been seeing with our weather pattern. That's why I'm pulling up the dew points from yesterday, because I just got to show you this comparison. Talk about the Caribbean. I mean, 21, I'm going to show you what this all means in just a moment. 21, so we were in the low 20s for our dew points. Now, here's that comparison today. So we nearly cut those in half. And just keeping in mind, when you're in 21, you're up there in that oppressive category. And we're talking now, not only comfy, hey, we're on the dry side of things. So whole new air mass that moved in. The current temperatures, what a departure these are, too. So yesterday, we were just over 30 degrees and 23 today, and unofficially, that's the high as well. But that cold front has moved through, so behind it, high pressure building in, and this is why we get the stability, and we have the clearer skies. You can see all those storms there towards the U.S. Northeast. That's all ahead of that cold front, but that new air mass has really moved in. Wants to put a few showers back towards Michigan or an isolated shower up into cottage country. I really don't think we're going to see anything. The greatest chance would actually be on the south shore of Lake Erie. So we generally just get into these clearer skies through the overnight. Could have a little bit of patchy fog tonight. And then tomorrow, lots of sunshine, perhaps a few more clouds, though, building into the afternoon hours, so maybe becoming more of a mix of sun and cloud. But overnight tonight, 13, keeping that north to northwesterly breeze, a little bit gusty at times. And then tomorrow, we're talking 23 degrees with mostly sunny skies. That's a look at your forecast. CBC Toronto News continues after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Canadian history this weekend in Aurora. That's where golfer Brooke Henderson is attempting to defend her CP Women's Open title. Greg Ross is at the Magna Golf Club for us tonight. And Greg, Henderson is the only second Canadian to win this tournament, and no Canadian has ever won it twice.
That's right, Dwight. And Henderson looking to do it in back-to-back years, and she is well on her way to doing that after a very good opening round here. She was on the course early this morning. The conditions were less than stellar, but she was still able to set the tone for the rest of the field.
Please welcome Brooke Henderson!
The reigning CP Women's Open champion didn't know what to expect when she took to the course this morning to officially begin defense of her title.
When I showed up this morning, it was really cold and really windy, and I was kind of like, uh-oh.
But she quickly forgot about the weather conditions when she saw the massive crowd of fans that showed up early to watch her round.
To have this many people out on Thursday morning is pretty special. And, you know, they were cheering for me right and early.
Among them, Henderson's 8-year-old cousin, Jordan Drummond, who came to see Henderson play live and in person for the first time. How'd you feel watching your cousin out there playing in front of those big crowds?
It was pretty amazing. Now, like, that I see her here, I didn't realize how much, like, people that she gets in front of, like, fans she has. So, I don't know, I'm just really proud of her.
Maybe one day you could do that?
I'll try, but probably not.
Henderson gave her fans plenty to cheer about. Yeah. This birdie on 18 was one of 7 for Henderson in the opening round. She finished at the top of the leaderboard at 6 under.
A Canadian wins.
Picking up where she left off last year when she became the first Canadian in 45 years to win this title.
Knowing that I was capable of winning this event after having done it last year, I just think gave me a lot of confidence and made me more comfortable in front of these crowds. And just knowing that I've done it before, I think, you know, it just gave me it just relaxed me a little bit, made me a little bit more calm, which I think is key when I'm playing well.
Henderson is looking to win the tournament on home soil just a couple of weeks after Bianca Andreescu did the same thing at the Rogers Cup. Henderson says she watched the 19-year-old tennis star on television.
Watching her compete was really inspiring to me, and I think gave me a little bit extra motivation, and I think it's doing the same for the whole country. So it's a pretty cool time to be involved with Canadian sports, I think.
Yeah, and Henderson held on to that lead for most of the day, but late this afternoon, American Ann Park was able to move into the lead. She's currently holding a 1-shot lead at 7 under, and a Canadian is tied with Henderson for second place right now. That's Anne-Catherine Tanguay of Quebec, who is also 6 under. And talk about making history at this tournament this week. How about 12-year-old Michelle Louis, who qualified, a grade 8 student. She played in this first round. I mean, obviously, she's not among the leaders. She was 9 over through her first round today, but what an experience for her. We just watched her walk into the scorer's tent and then face a throng of media, Dwight, and she handled it very well. It was a tough day for her, but she handled it like a pro. And again, she's 12 years old. She's getting ready to start school in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, grade 8, and I think we're going to see that young lady on a few leaderboards in the future. Thank you for that, Greg.
My goal is to do right for the people of Peel region, 1.5 million people, and the 3,000 members of the organization. And there's lots of opportunities. There's many things that have been best in class there, and there's an opportunity for like a generation to move forward.
He's about to take over as chief of Peel Police, and when he does, he'll be the first person of color to do so. My interview with Nish Duriappa coming up after the break. Police have added 8 new charges against a 23-year-old Kitchener woman accused in an explosion that rocked a community in London. Last Wednesday around 11 p.m., Daniela Alexandra Lee's car crashed into a home and ruptured a gas line. Emergency crews responded and began evacuating surrounding homes. Then minutes later, the house exploded. About 100 homes were evacuated and 7 people were injured, including a firefighter. Lees is now facing 4 additional counts of impaired operation over 80 milligrams causing bodily harm and 4 counts of criminal negligence causing bodily harm. In total, police say she is now facing 12 charges. She is scheduled to appear in court in 2 weeks.
3, 2, 1, fire.
If you're looking down at your second screen, you got to look up for this one. This is the former Nanticoke generating station. It was demolished today. Wait for it, it's coming. There it is. At one point, the generating station was the largest coal-fired plant in the world. It produced power for more than 40 years and at its peak capacity could power a city the size of Toronto. But it hasn't been a working coal plant in many years. The station burned its last piece of coal at the end of 2013. The Ontario government is apparently prepared to take CBC News to court to prevent our journalists from asking for details about what the government is planning to do. It's information Ontario used to make public, and it's information the federal government and many other provinces still do. Mike Wise is tracking this for us tonight. So what exactly is this all about, Mike?
Well, Dwight, it's about something called a mandate letter. Now, I used to cover Queen's Park, and it was common for reporters to request these to get a sense of what the government was planning. Whenever a new cabinet is sworn in, the Premier sends a letter to each new minister laying out his or her expectations for what each ministry is supposed to accomplish over the government's mandate. Well, in June of last year, after the new government was sworn in, CBC News asked the Ford government for those letters, but never got them. We did get, though, a copy of an email from Greg Harrington, one of the Premier's policy directors, to Senior Policy Advisor Derek O'Toole, suggesting they didn't want to make them public. The email wrote, here's the letters. As I said, the intention is to keep them to ourselves as long as possible. In response, thanks, Greg, understood, smiley face. Well, Ontario's Privacy Commissioner reviewed those letters and found they were pretty close to the government's election policy promises and ruled they didn't violate any cabinet secrecy concerns. I actually went online, I surveyed other governments, and mandate letters are common. The government in Newfoundland and Labrador right there makes it very easy to look these up. I found similar letters for the governments of Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Manitoba, British Columbia. Many provinces have them. In fact, the federal government that not only releases mandate letters, there's a website you see there that lets you track how well each minister is doing to fulfill promises. Now, Alberta used to publish mandate letters. It was actually Rachel Notley's NDP government that did away with them a few years into her mandate. And here in Ontario, the Liberals made them public, either online or by request. Former Premier Kathleen Wynne says there's no reason why the PCs shouldn't be doing the same.
My government was the first government in the province to publish mandate letters and provide an update to the press and to the public about the progress on those mandate letters. And now we have a government that won't even release the mandate letters.
Now, this month, Ontario's Privacy Commissioner ruled in CBC's favor, saying they're in the public interest and ordered the government release the letters. However, now we're learning the government is asking for a judicial review of that decision, taking it to the Ontario Divisional Court. We don't know when that court date will be, but CBC remains committed to obtaining those mandate letters, so we can now see what's in them. Dwight?
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Doctors and their patients can expect some changes in how conditions are diagnosed and treated. A group looking into restricting what they call inappropriate and overused physician services just released recommendations to work towards saving Ontario nearly $500 million. Chris Glover explains.
Doctors and nurses in Ontario are busy, but what they're doing isn't always needed. That's according to the so-called Appropriateness Working Group, a group of doctors who today unveiled recommendations for saving OHIP millions of dollars.
Medical knowledge is constantly changing, and this is a reflection of sort of modernization of care.
They suggest delisting 11 medical services that are either less effective, such as recommending arthritis patients avoid knee surgery, or they're services that are now deemed outdated, such as certain kinds of infertility tests.
We allow that professional discretion to be there. But what we are also telegraphing is that when it's not medically necessary, then we should modernize the care and move to what's more appropriate or just not do it at all.
The group was formed after doctors in the province finally reached a 4-year contract in February. A condition of that contract required both sides to come together to find $460 million in savings. A 2017 study estimated up to 35% of medical services are unnecessary, such as pre-surgical tests in healthy young patients.
Often these things are just ordered routinely, even though they're really not necessary. They've just become kind of part of how things are done.
In 2004, eye exams and chiropractic care were cut from OHIP coverage by the then Liberal government.
Our system is in need of transformational change.
And this year, the new Progressive Conservative health minister has already made changes to OHIP, including limits to out-of-country medical costs and a new restriction to OHIP Plus. Now, only people under 25 without private insurance can get eligible prescription medications. But families who max out their private insurance have to cover the rest out of pocket.
We're going from a budget that we were barely able to keep to now we're definitely going into debt.
The health minister has accepted this first round of recommendations that will come into effect in October. And while officials don't know how much these 11 recommendations will save, they say they're already working on what could be eliminated next. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Halton Deputy Police Chief Nish Duriappa begins his new role as Chief of Peel Regional Police in October. He just wrapped up more than 2 decades with Halton Region earlier today. I spoke with Duriappa at his Holt High School in Milton, where his policing roots began, about how he's preparing to take on a bigger role in a new region.
When you enter policing, you do it because you want to do right for the people, for the organization, the community. That narrative doesn't change no matter what rank you are. My goal is to do right for the people of Peel Region, 1.5 million people, and the 3,000 members of the organization. And there's lots of opportunities. There's many things that have been best in class there. And there's an opportunity for like a generation to move forward, to rebrand and do things differently, but also to honor the traditions of that organization. And I'm ready for it.
What is in the water at this high school that it's produced 2 GTA Chiefs, because Mark Saunders went to this high school and you also went to this high school?
Yeah, that's right. We're getting the water tested right now to see what it is about it. But I don't think it's the water. Honestly, it's got to be about the environment and the space that the school created.
And the community here in Milton.
Yeah, absolutely, the community.
Let's talk about your experience here. We'll start at the beginning. An immigrant kid from Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And family just came here like many of us looking for a better life. Tell us that part of the story.
Yeah, you know what? It's the cliche story, right? Parents left Sri Lanka just before the turmoil began. They came to where the work was. We landed in Toronto for a few years. Milton was just growing. They didn't know anybody other than one other Sri Lankan family here. And right into the school system, one of the few South Asian visible minority families in the schools. And it's for those that have lived in suburbia and have experienced that, it's that atypical story, right?
We're doing the interview outside of your high school because it was a special place for you. It's kind of the place that led you to policing.
Right here is the library, and the librarian slid me this piece of paper for a program for youth to participate with the police and a cultural education program. And it happened over the summer. And I thought all my buddies will probably be either flipping burgers or doing something. And I thought, this sounds pretty cool. Never thought of policing. And that was the beginning. And at the end of that summer, what happened was, it wasn't because I got to ride around in a cruiser or got to see what policing really is here. It's because of a few individuals that really extended themselves to me. What happened is that they maintained contact with me. It opened a whole new world, and you realize that policing is not just about the uniform or what it could be in the media. It is also about the individuals that are behind the uniform, and that exceptional experience is what turned me on to the real people behind it and what brought me into policing.
People kind of look at you as a role model. People of color, people from marginalized communities, they look up to you, and oftentimes the relationship with police is not that great. But now a young person can look up and say, hey, look, the chief kind of looks like me. Mm-hmm. How important is that part of the role modeling and the outreach to diverse communities? Because it is going to be part of your job when you get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the traditional age-old, go catch bad guys is still needed when it's needed, but there are other things that need to be done within the community to strengthen, to insulate upstream activities, which is a space for policing to fill, but to do it with others. And that's something we need to bring with us. And right from youth-based programs to faith or cultural, or even just to mitigating risk in the community with its addictions, mental health, it's a transferable principle, and that's what I intend on bringing, and I think the organization's ready for that there.
Sounds like you're ready too. Congratulations.
Thanks,
Mitch.
Wade. Great to see you.
And I know we'll be covering you and talking to you over the years as you take over.
Likewise.
In Peel.
Yeah, great.
Congrats,
Thank you very much.
All kept on coming until the chairs started coming. And once the chairs started coming, they hit the speakers, and then people seen us, and they all got into it, and chairs were just flying everywhere.
A shock rocker, a no-show, and the X. What happens when you mix the three? A riot. We'll take you back nearly 30 years in Toronto history. Maybe you were there. Still ahead. And I know you weren't there causing all kind of trouble at that riot 30 years ago.
Let me just think a second.
Nah, you weren't there.
I could have been.
No. Colin, our floor director, might have been. He's around that age, but I know we weren't there, Colin.
No, we weren't there. I'll tell you where we were, though. We were here to experience this big change in our weather in terms of the heat and humidity from yesterday and then where we're at today. And just to kind of frame things and remind you, showing you what we would see for an average height this time of year, 25.1 degrees, okay? Average low, 13.6. How'd we fare today? Pretty close to that. In fact, a little on the cool side. So just over 30 degrees yesterday, and today 23.4 unofficial high, and today's low, well, it was still a little mild. Tonight is going to be a different story. We're actually going to fall very close to those norms. I want to show you what's going on here with the winds, though, because this is a big part of the story, the weather story for the next several days. We see that west to northwesterly direction. Now, at times, a little bit breezy. They'll ease somewhat, and then as we go into the overnight hours, we'll get some gusts coming back at us. But generally, if you're looking at the direction of what's happening with those winds, there's some kind of a northerly component with it, and that's going through Friday. As we head into Saturday, we're still seeing that, and we're still seeing kind of a similar air mass as this high pressure is sort of building in, but it's still nosing its way over the Great Lakes. And as it does, it's not for a little while yet before we start to see those winds changing direction yet again. So late Saturday into Sunday, we'll get more of a component perhaps coming off the lake, and we'll see the humidity then from some of the moisture there just driving up the humidity a tiny bit for the second half of the weekend, but really still very dry and comfortable in terms of those dew points like I was showing you earlier in the show. Our current temperatures then 23 degrees. We're still holding at that. Nothing really to speak of on our satellite radar imagery. Now, just because of the Lake Huron, it could have some isolated showers more towards southwestern Ontario, a sprinkle possible to the west of the GTA. I mean, I'm really not putting it into the forecast because the chance is just so slim, but there's some convergence with the winds and with the water there that it's possible. Overnight tonight, 12 to 14 degrees for the overnight lows, and for tomorrow afternoon, kind of similar to today, a lot of sunshine and a few more clouds, becoming kind of a mix later in the day. As we go into Saturday and Sunday, I was going to say you can't ask for more. I actually like a little more heat and humidity, but I think most people are going to be pretty happy, Dwight, with a look at this forecast and just how long it's going to last in this pattern.
We are smiling in the sunshine. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
I'm Natalie Danowski. This pile of wood used to be 3 tall trees. Residents in Brampton are upset that they're losing some mature trees to make room for a wider parkway. I'll have that story coming up.
Some Brampton residents are upset after the city started cutting down mature trees in their neighborhood along Williams Parkway. The plan is to expand the road from 4 to 6 lanes. Residents say they've been fighting that idea now for years. Natalie Nanowski has more.
I had 3 beautiful maples that were about 37 years old. They covered the whole 66 feet of my yard here.
This is how Nancy Trembath's backyard looked until about a week ago. Here's it now. That shaded area by the fence, gone.
It's devastating for all of us, for the family, for my children. It made the property. That's why we bought here.
Those trees were on the other side of her fence, meaning they belong to Brampton.
It says notice to residents.
And part of the city's master transportation plan is to expand Williams Parkway from 4 to 6 lanes in order to prepare for the traffic of 2040. And that means getting rid of some of the trees along a 4-kilometer stretch of road. People in the area aren't happy about it.
Now, there's been some ongoing business since about 2014 about how they were going to widen the street. The neighbors did not want a wider street.
Residents say they were never told that trees on the north side were going to be affected. They say they only got a notice saying that vegetation on the south side was going to be cut.
This letter also talks about construction on the south side of Williams Parkway. I live on the north side of Williams Parkway.
Alongside those 2 extra lanes, the city will be building a concrete sound barrier and says crews probably determined those giant maples would get in the way, even though they were up against Trembath's property line, meters away from the future street.
I cannot understand how anybody can cut down mature trees in the face of global warming.
Construction for the expansion will start in 2021. Once completed, officials say some new trees will be planted. But residents say that's not good enough because it will take years for those trees to mature. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Brampton.
It's been 8 years since Jack Layton passed away. After the break, how Olivia Chow, his son Mike, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh remembered him here in Toronto. We'll be right back.
Reminded every day of just how many lives that he touched, and it's I think a good reminder to all of us that you have to live a full life, live a life doing good, positive things for those around you and for your cities, for your country.
Missing Jack on his bike on Queen Street. It's been 8 years since former federal NDP leader Jack Layton died. Today, Layton's son, Mike, City Councillor himself, and wife Olivia Chow were joined by current NDP leader Jagmeet Singh at Layton's memorial statue. Jack Layton died in 2011 after battling cancer. He was 61. It was nearly 30 years ago this week when the C&E Grandstand became the site of a riot, all thanks to a no-show from a shock rocker. And that's the topic of this week's Throwback Toronto. A rock riot broke out at the X this week in 1980. 14,000 Alice Cooper fans were waiting for him to come on stage, but he canceled at the last minute. The singer was reportedly ill.
It started with a couple guys throwing chairs over on the stage, and then the police formed a chain reaction to try to stop it, but it was getting too rough with the chairs and bottles being thrown at them that all the police went on top of the stage. Bottles kept on coming until the chairs started coming. And once the chairs started coming, they hit the speakers, and then people seen this and they all got into it, and chairs were just flying everywhere, and people were getting injured and everything.
There were only 12 police officers at the grandstand when trouble began. 200 others were called in to say, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." 31 people were arrested and 18 people were sent to hospital, including 5 police officers. The estimated damage to the grandstand, more than $20,000, most of it in folding chairs. Concession stands were pushed over, and outside, rioters smashed vehicles in the parking lot. In fact, it was the third rock riot in Toronto that summer, when politicians weren't ready to turn off the music.
I think you can't deprive those people who act in a very well-behaved way and deny them the entertainment because a small group of people acted like a bunch of idiots last night because a performer didn't show up.
Yeah, I think that was Paul Godfrey at the end there. Talk about a throwback. The best-known shipwreck in history is being consumed by the ocean. The Titanic continues to deteriorate. About 4,000 meters down at the bottom of the North Atlantic, these are the first new pictures of the wreck in nearly 15 years. They were shot by an international team using a custom-built submersible. They show bacteria eating away at the metal. Some parts have actually totally disappeared. 1,500 people died when the ship hit an iceberg and sank in April 1912, about 600 kilometers south of Newfoundland. A team of experts is studying the images to assess how long it will be before the Titanic is fully lost to the sea.
This is it. When the clerk calls your name and you get the certificate from the minister and you shake all these hands and you go back and go to the side and sign the certificate, that's when you're becoming a Canadian citizen.
But it's no ordinary citizenship ceremony. It's a fan expo version. We'll take you there after the break. Today marks the start of Fan Expo, where people have a chance to meet some of their favorite superheroes and Hollywood stars. And to kick off the fantastic weekend, almost 100 people gathered to become stars themselves, getting their Canadian citizenship. Take a look.
It is a big day. This is a big day for all of you. You've been waiting a long time for this? Right. And soon you're going to be saying the oath of citizenship to become a Canadian citizen.
Being on the other side, I know what the people are going through. I know the excitement, the frustration, and the relief of getting through it and knowing that you're part of this amazing country.
In accepting citizenship today, you also accept your responsibilities, such as the responsibility to obey the law, to take responsibility for yourself and your family, and to vote. You also have a responsibility to help others in the community. Volunteerism is an important component of our Canadian society, and I encourage all of you to actively seek out opportunities to do so. It is through such service that you can deepen your knowledge and love of Canada.
I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen.
So, as the clerk mentioned, please meet the minister and leave all your papers. Don't worry about it. I will watch it, and I got support from the back with the stormtroopers. Okay, so don't worry about it. Congratulations. Take your flag. What do you do?
I'm a civil engineer.
Civil engineer. Nice. Excellent. Welcome to Canada.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Welcome. Welcome, sir. You're now a Canadian citizen.
Joy, overwhelmed, you know, it was just tremendous to be such a part of, you know, a great nation, to making that step on becoming a part of, you know, something truly amazing.
It's a good way to show inclusion. Everybody has a home here in Canada, especially in the arts. And, you know, we walk around in life with our own busy little life, but the fact that we can celebrate each other and help each other feel included, I think is fantastic. So that's why I think having the citizenship ceremony here is so much fun. And actually, I was looking forward to it. It was fun for me.
Oh, that was really cool. I remember my ceremony. Now when I see them, I get goosebumps myself.
I was going to say, yeah, it makes me feel happy just to see how happy they are. Like, that's awesome.
To be part of us. Thank you for that. All right. We've got some sunshine to welcome the newest citizens for the next little while.
We do. And it is, you're right, it's going to last for a while. So our forecast overnight tonight, we're looking at mostly clear skies. There could be a tiny bit of patchy fog, but primarily I think we're just going to have these clearer conditions, and our temperature falling to 13 to 14 degrees for the overnight lows. A little further north, we're talking 12. We're not into single digits yet, Dwight. You said that the other day. We're not there yet. Afternoon tomorrow, 23, and lots of sunshine. It will come.
What's cool about it is that the humidity seems to have gone away a bit, but we still have some of that heat.
Yeah,
and
completely different. It feels comfortable, and it sticks around till about Monday.
Yes, that's it for us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night, everybody.